top stories this hour. Troops arrest more than 100 villagers in Magwe region in Myanmar. Azerbaijan and Karabakh separatists hold constructive peace talks. Army chief warns that war could spill over into the neighbors in Sudan. Welcome to the World News on VOP TV. I'm Joy Adesuwa Iramoseli. Junta troops have arrested and interrogated more than 100 villagers in Magwe region's Gagwa township after anti-junta militia captured weapons in a raid on an armed depot. The roundup began on Monday in Constuctive village, where villagers have been armed and told to defend the depot. According to a statement by the Your National Revolution Force, earlier in the day, Combined People's Defense Force (PDFs) attacked the armed depot. They fought a 20-minute battle with junta troops and affiliated Pyongyang-hit soldiers. The statement disclosed that 3 members of the combined junta forces were killed and the rest of the troops fled their camp. A PDF official who didn't want to be named for security reasons mentioned that the defense forces were able to seize a lot of guns and bullets because the villagers who had been told to guard the depot didn't put up a fight, prompting an angry response from junta troops. Tang Sui-wing, the junta spokesperson for Mangwa region, did not answer when called about to get comments on the arrest. Azerbaijan has stated that it is delivering food and other humanitarian aid to Nagorno-Karabakh 2 days after the region's ethnic Armenian separatist government called a ceasefire in a short but intense fight with Azerbaijani forces. Nagorno-Karabakh, 120,000 people have suffered severe shortage of food and medicine since late last year, when a blockade began on the road connecting the region to Armenia. Improving the supply of food and other basic needs will be a key issue in building stability in the region, which is within Azerbaijan but had been under the control of ethnic Armenian forces since 1994. On Tuesday, Azerbaijan launched intense fire on Armenian positions in what it called an anti-terrorist operation, demanding that the Armenians lay down their arms and the separatist government disband. A day later, Nagorno-Karabakh authorities agreed to the military demands, but talks on how the region will be reintegrated into Azerbaijan have not reached final agreement. In the same vein, Azerbaijan and Armenian separatists from the disputed territory of Nagorno-Karabakh have held their first direct peace talks on Thursday after Baku claimed to have regained control over the breakaway region in a lightning military operation. The separatists agreed to lay down their arms on Wednesday as part of a Russian-brokered ceasefire plan that halted Azerbaijan's 24-hour offensive to retake land at the center of the decade of conflict. Azerbaijan's presidency noted that the 2-hour meeting had been held in a constructive and peaceful atmosphere in the presence of Russian peacekeepers, and both sides expressed readiness to hold more talks. Baku's negotiators presented plans for the reintegration of Karabakh Armenian population into Azerbaijan and pledged to provide urgently needed fuel, humanitarian supplies, and medical care to residents. While the meeting was happening, gunfire rang out in the separatist stronghold of Stepanaket despite the truce deal. The breakaway authorities accused Azerbaijan of violating the ceasefire, but Baku denied the allegation. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky will address the Canadian Parliament on Friday as he continues his efforts to shore up support from Western allies for Ukraine's war against Russian invasion. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's office disclosed that Zelensky arrived at Ottawa's airport late on Thursday after meeting with U.S. President Joe Biden and lawmakers in Washington. Trudeau greeted Zelensky and will also be speaking to Parliament in Ottawa on Friday. It is Zelensky's first visit to Canada since Russia invaded Ukraine in February 2022. He previously addressed the Canadian Parliament virtually after the war started. Zelensky and Trudeau are scheduled to go from Ottawa to Toronto to meet with local Ukrainian community. Canada is home to about 1.4 million people of Ukrainian descent, close to 4% of the population. Now, still, Ukraine and the United States have agreed to launch joint weapon production in a step that will enable Kyiv to start producing air defense systems. President Volodymyr Zelensky said on Friday as he wrapped up a visit to the U.S. In his daily address to Ukrainians, Zelensky noted that the long-term agreement would create jobs and a new industry based in Ukraine, whose economy has been devastated by Russia's invasion and war. Kyiv has stepped up efforts to boost domestic weapons production as much as possible because 19 months of war has created a huge demand for arms and ammunition to fend off Russian attacks along a 1,000-kilometer front line. Russia's airstrike across Ukraine have caused widespread damage and killed many people. Zelensky stated that the Ministry for Strategic Industries, which oversees weapons production in Ukraine, had signed cooperation agreements with 3 associations uniting over 2,000 defense U.S. companies on future possible work in Ukraine. Meanwhile, Canadian Prime Minister has called on India to cooperate with an investigation into the murder of Sikh separatist leader in British Columbia and stated that Canada will not release its evidence. Justice Justin Trudeau stated on Monday that Ottawa had credible allegations linking India government agents to the murder of Hardeep Singh Nijjar in June, prompting an angry reaction from New Delhi. 45-year-old Nijjar was a Canadian citizen. Traditional Canadian allies have so far taken a relatively cautious approach to the matter. Political analysts mentioned that this was partly because the United States and other major players see India as a counterweight to the growing influence of China. Fresh from a high-profile visit to Russia and a meeting with President Vladimir Putin, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has called for strengthening close contact with Moscow. Pyongyang's news reported on Friday that Politburo meeting of the ruling Workers' Party of Korea discussed Kim's official goodwill visit to Russia. A report from the meeting stated that the recent visit puts DPRK-Russian relations on a new strategic level in response to the demand of the new era and brought a radical change in the world geopolitical situation. Kim started his visit to Russia on September 12 and ended it on September 17. The report also disclosed that Kim's visit introduced long-term plans for developing DPRK-Russia relations, again using the official acronym for North Korea. Kim stressed that the need to strengthen close contacts and cooperation among relevant fields of the two countries to expand and develop cooperation in every field in an all-round way. The Kim-Putin meeting and talk of the military cooperation raised fears in Western circle that North Korea may help Russia prolong its war on Ukraine, while Russia could help North Korea's illegal weapons program. China and Syria will upgrade their relationship to a strategic partnership following a meeting between China's President Xi Jinping and Syria's diplomatically isolated leader Bashar al-Assad in Hangzhou on Friday. Xi stated that the face of an unstable and uncertain international environment, China is willing to continue to work with Syria in the interest of friendly cooperation and safeguarding international fairness and justice. The Syrian leader is in China to advance efforts to bring to an end more than a decade of diplomatic isolation under Western sanctions and to boost commercial ties with the world's second-largest economy, as Syria desperately needs foreign investment. Western sanctions on Syria have been steadily tightened since the early days of the civil war that began in 2011 with a crackdown on protests and went on to kill hundreds of thousands of people and displace millions. Assad's government, backed by Russia and Iran, now control most territory and has re-established ties in recent years with Arab neighbors that once backed its opponents. Assad is set to attend Saturday's Asian Games game opening ceremony with more than a dozen other foreign dignitaries. In his latest bid to return to the world stage, Syria joined China's Belt and Road Initiative in 2022 and was welcomed back into the Arab League in May. Meanwhile, the China-ASEAN Civil Aviation Cooperation and Exchange Center has been officially launched at a recent forum on industry cooperation in Nanning, South China's Guangxi Zhuge Autonomous Region. According to Pan Ziyin, Executive Vice Chairman of China Air Transport Association, the center aims to strengthen the connectivity of air route network linking China and ASEAN and promote the coordinated development of aviation-oriented culture tourism. Pan disclosed that it will also build platforms for China-ASEAN Civil Aviation Cooperation, hold aviation technology and equipment exhibitions, and develop demonstration areas for civil aviation capacity building. The center was jointly initiated by 15 organizations, including the CATA, China Southern Airlines, and Singapore's Changi Airport. Since China and ASEAN formally established dialogue relations, the annual passenger traffic volume of China-ASEAN civil aviation has jumped from 295,000 to 26.58 million, a roughly 90-fold increase. The head of Russia's trade mission in Iran, Rustam Zigeshin, has disclosed that the first visa-free flight to a tourist group had started between Iran and Russia. Zigashian mentioned that the first visa-free flights of Iranian tourist group between Russia and Iran have begun. Iran and Russia signed an agreement on visa-free tourist travel in March. According to the deal, a visa-free regime is established for groups of tourists of up to 50 people entering Russia or Iran for up to 15 days. Since April, Sudan has been embroiled in a civil war that has killed thousands of people. Back in 2021, the two generals staged a coup, but in recent months, a power struggle between them had led to their men taking up arms against each other. Speaking to the UN on Thursday, General Benyam stated that his party was open to peace talks and wanted to put an end to this war and to alleviate the suffering of our people, but disclosed that the RSF refused. However, in a rare video message to the UN, his opponent, General Dagalo, also known as Emiti, stated that he was ready to engage in talks. Sudan's civil war erupted in April when members of the RSF were deployed around the country in a move the army led by General Burhan saw as a threat. It is disputed who fired the first shot, but the fighting swiftly escalated in different parts of the country. The fighting has killed at least 7,500 people, according to NGO ACLED, and displaced millions. General Burhan, who had been the de facto leader of Sudan following a coup in 2021, has been traveling around the world seeking to gain international support. Addressing the UN, he also alluded to the RSF ties to Wagner, a Russian mercenary group who are operating across Africa in the Central African Republic, Sudan, Libya, Mozambique, and Mali. General Burhan also argued the RSF should be considered a terrorist group as they have supported killing, burning, raping, forced displacement, looting, stealing, torture, trafficking of arms and drugs, bringing mercenary or recruiting children. He disclosed that those crimes required accountability and punishment. However, General Buram has also faced criticism for military actions throughout the conflict. Upon his resignation in mid-September, the UN envoy to Sudan, Volker Perthes, was fiercely critical of both generals who, he said, has chosen to plunge the country into a war. Perthes blamed the RSF for the sexual violence, looting and killing in areas it controls. He also condemned the Sudanese armed forces for indiscriminate aerial bombing. The RSF fighters are embedded in densely populated urban areas, and the Sudanese military appears to view these areas as legitimate targets. Already, the US has imposed sanctions on RSF leaders, including General Dagalo, but the West has also been strongly critical of General Buram due to his role in displacing Sudan's leading party in 2021 coup. Two French journalists have been expelled from Morocco this week in a move denounced by media outlets and press freedom advocates. Staff reporter Quentin Muller and freelancer photo journalist Teresa Di Campo, who work for the weekly Marianne magazine, said on Wednesday that they were taken by force from the Casablancan hotel room by 10 plain-clothed police officers and put on the first flight to Paris. Both Muller and Stéphane Aubin expressed that the expulsions were politically motivated in response to critical reporting. Morocco denied the charge and said their removal was about procedure, not politics. However, media activists framed it as the latest action taken by Moroccan authorities against journalists. The Tunisian Journalists Union has condemned the authorities for arresting a popular cartoonist. It has called for immediate release of Taoufik Omrain, as he has been charged with offensive activity over his drawings that poke fun at Tunisian Prime Minister Ahmed Hashani. Omrain's lawyer said he has been seized at his home and taken to the National Security Office in the town of Megrine, near the capital Tunis, at the order of the public prosecutor. Omrain is well known for his satirical cartoons of President Kais Saied, the increasingly autocratic president who seized almost all powers 2 years ago. Has had many of his critics detained in recent months. African governments have called on the UN Human Rights Council to terminate the mandate of a team of human rights experts on Ethiopia after the submission of its latest report earlier this week. The expert panel mentioned that war crime and crimes against humanity were still being committed despite the signing of the cessation of hostilities agreement officially ending the war in Tigray. It further stated that violent confrontations are at a near-national scale, but an Ethiopian delegate accused the commission of failing to recognize the efforts of the government and engaging in defamatory rhetoric with questionable methodology. In its call for the ending of the experts panel mandate, a representative of the African group made up of the 54 African Union member states at the UN stated that the domestic measures of accountability should be taken by Ethiopian government with nationwide consultation. The delegate who spoke at the ongoing regular meeting of the UN Human Rights Council in Geneva said this was successfully underway. The call stands in stark contrast to calls by global rights watchdogs like Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch for the mandate to be extended amid renewed violence in northern Ethiopia. The UN Commission experts visited Ethiopia in July last year, but their stay was limited to the capital, Addis Ababa, as they were denied access to any of the areas that were affected by the conflict in northern Ethiopia. Their mandate is due to end in December unless the Council decides otherwise. Meanwhile, an Ethiopian-born U.S. contractor who worked at the State and Justice Departments has been arrested and charged with sending classified information to Ethiopia. The Justice Department stated that 50 years old Abraham Teklu Lema is accused of passing on classified information since last August to an official associated with Ethiopia's intelligence service. The department did not name the African country he was allegedly spying for, but it was identified by the New York Times and other U.S. media outlets as Ethiopia. He faces 3 charges, including gathering or delivering defense information to aid a foreign government and unauthorized possession of national defense information and willfully retaining it. Abraham, whose arrest last month was kept under seal until Thursday, is a naturalized U.S. citizen of Ethiopian descent living in Silver Spring, Maryland. He worked as an IT administrator for the Department of State and as a management analyst for the Department of Justice. The suspect had been granted top-secret security clearance and access to the U.S. classified system. He could face the death penalty if convicted of espionage. And that's it on World News on VOP TV. I'm Joy Adesuwa Eramosele. Many thanks for staying with us.